Being a bassist is a paradox. It's the role every casual fan overlooks, the member of the band most easily swallowed by stage lights or the roar of the drums. Bassists get fewer headlines, less screen time, and yet they're the muscle and marrow holding the whole thing together. Without them, the whole sound would collapse into a hollow mess. It's often said that the best bass players are invisible, leaving only their groove behind, but a rare breed refuses to stay in the shadows. Geddy Lee of Rush is one of these, a musical force so skilled, so audacious in his command of the bass, that you can't help but hear him, even when he's precisely where he's supposed to be in the mix. Geddy Lee's own talents are the stuff of legend. In Rush, he was more than just a bassist. He was a frontman, a singer, an orchestrator. His bass lines are so intricate that most players would be content to master just one, but Lee does it while weaving his voice into complex melodies on top. And yet, when Lee talks about his heroes, he's more than just a musician praising musicians. He's a player who knows what it takes to break free from the expectations and limitations of the instrument, and his words ring with reverence, awe, and the kind of insight that only a fellow bass magician could give. When Lee names his favorites, it's not just admiration. It's an invitation to understand the depths of musicality and creativity that the bass can hold. First up is Jaco Pastorius, a name that practically glows with significance in jazz fusion. Pastorius didn't just play bass, he carved it into a weapon of artistic rebellion. Known for his use of the fretless bass, an instrument that made his sound smoother and more slippery, Pastorius could make notes sing, cry, and dance like nothing else in jazz fusion. His work with Weather Report alone would have secured him legendary status, but then he went ahead and collaborated with Joni Mitchell, weaving his sound into her work on Hejira, Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, and Mingus, 3 records that took Mitchell's folk roots and spun them into something deeper, darker, more complex. Jaco wasn't just laying down a beat, he was playing lead melodies, pushing the boundaries of harmony and adding atmospheric depth to her soundscapes. Lee, who'd seen countless bassists, recounts the experience of seeing Jaco live as life-altering, one of those moments that reaches inside you and shifts everything you thought you knew.
Jaco was a jazz player, really more than he was any other kind of player, and he had those environments and those arrangements that were loose enough to allow him to be, so free and to use all the tools in his toolbox. And he certainly did that. As you said, the harmonics and the lyrical bending of notes and the strong melody. And at the same time, you take a song like Teen Town, where he's just off the charts, fast and complex, and that became the new kind of watermark for bass players. Incredible musician.
For Lee, Pastorius represented the height of technical and emotional achievement, a one-man revolution who made the bass into a vehicle of personal expression. But if Jaco was the innovator, Chris Squire of Yes was the thunderous heart of progressive rock. Squire wasn't there to play in the background. He was there to reshape the sound of his band entirely. When you hear that Rickenbacker growling through tracks like Roundabout or Heart of the Sunrise, you're hearing a sound that is unmistakable, raw, and powerful. Squire wasn't content to play bass in a supportive role. Instead, he treated his instrument like a weapon of creative control, a sonic battering ram that held every song together while pushing it forward. Squire's playing is aggressive, relentless, the kind of style that fills every corner of a song. He didn't see any reason why the bass couldn't be as loud, as fast, or as central as the guitar, and his presence can be felt on albums like Fragile and Close to the Edge, which are still cited as the high watermark of progressive rock. For Geddy Lee, Squire was more than an influence. He was a lodestar, a player who showed that a bassist could lead a band with the same confidence as any guitarist or vocalist. Rush's catalogue is filled with echoes of Squire's style, not as imitation but as homage, Lee's own way of carving out that powerful propulsive force that Squire brought to Yes. When Geddy turns to rock, he singles out John Paul Jones, a man often overshadowed by his flamboyant bandmates, but whose contributions were essential to Led Zeppelin's sound. Where Squire was bold, Jones was subtle. Where Jaco was flashy, Jones was methodical. But don't let that fool you into thinking he played it safe. Jones brought a background in jazz and classical music to Zeppelin, a band that was, on paper, about as far from those genres as you could get. But Jones didn't just keep up. He shaped the sound, adding depth, tension, and a refined touch to Zeppelin's wild compositions. Listen to Ramble On or Dazed and Confused, and you can feel Jones weaving through Jimmy Page's guitar and John Bonham's drums, finding those little pockets of space and filling them with a sound that was both foundational and flexible. In How Many More Times, a track Lee has often praised, you hear Jones in his finest form, blending jazz and blues into something hauntingly original. When Geddy saw Zeppelin play in Toronto, the experience was electric. For him, Jones's bass lines were a revelation, showing him the creative potential of blending hard rock with the sophisticated genre-blurring qualities that Jones embodied.
Which would give a much more percussive sound. An interesting little trick there if you want to go into it.
What's the trick? Sure.
The trick on that particular riff is that it's using octave strings on a 4-string bass. So instead of doing, it sounds fairly weak. You slide up and you hit those two strings in unison. So it goes, and then hit these in octaves. So there's always two strings playing at any time, which gives it that power, which a lot of people don't know.
When the guitar magazines transcribe the song, do they get it right?
No.
Then there's Jack Bruce, perhaps the only bassist on this list who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Lee in terms of sheer audacity. Bruce, the bassist of Cream, was as daring a player as they come. In the psychedelic whirlwind of Cream, Bruce held his own, and then some, standing up to Eric Clapton's fiery solos and Ginger Baker's chaotic drumming. He wasn't a follower, he was a force, holding down the rhythm while also bending it to his will, adding his own voice to the swirling psychedelic storm that defined Cream's sound. Bruce was known for his improvisational style, a quality that made each Cream performance unpredictable and thrilling. His bass lines were like miniature symphonies, filled with flourishes, embellishments, and counter melodies that elevated the songs far beyond what most trios could achieve. When Lee recalls seeing Cream live, you can feel his respect and admiration, a kind of awe that only comes from watching a musician who has mastered his craft in a way that is both unorthodox and unparalleled. Each of these musicians took the bass and made it something new, something unforgettable. They weren't content to be background players. They seized the spotlight, each in his own way. And for Geddy Lee, these players are more than just influences. They're kindred spirits, musicians who understand that the bass is as limitless as the imagination of the player. Pastorius, Squire, Jones, and Bruce didn't just play. They created, they pushed, they expanded. For Lee, they represent the pinnacle of what bass playing can be: inventive, emotional, unrestrained. It's as if he's crafted his own personal hall of legends, a tribute to the players who turned the bass into an art form as expressive and boundless as any instrument on earth.